Well, good morning. I'm here with Doug to talk about omnipresent AI cameras and other things. And that's the first story. The
Omnipresent
AI,
AI cameras.
yes, Ars Technica has an article here. This came from Larry Ellison, the CEO of
Oh,
Oracle. He says we're going to have supervision. He says uh, this is his vision for an AI-powered surveillance future presented during a company financial meeting. He describes a world where artificial intelligence systems will constantly monitor citizens through an extensive network of cameras and drones, stating that this would ensure both police and citizens don't break the law. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we are constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on. And every police officer will be supervised at all times. And if there's a problem, AI will report the problem and, and report it to the appropriate person.
wait. Who's the appropriate person?
Well, that's the problem. Evidently, he never read 1984. I mean, this is exactly the sort of paranoid dystopia where the problem is there's somebody at the top, and we've seen this a million times in history. All you need is a dictator with total knowledge and the authority to do anything he wants, and that will create utopia. Isn't that utopia?
It is.
It's utopia for the one guy at the top, and it's tyranny
Yes.
for everybody
And
else.
and we've seen that with Jim Jones. We've seen that with David Koresh.
Yeah.
We've seen that in Europe
Yeah, but
many times.
well,
We've
the
seen
reason
that with stuff.
yeah, the reason why all the oligarchs always propose this is because they always figure that they're going to be the guy on the top. And
Yeah.
for him, this will be great. I can do whatever I want, and all those irritating people will be zapped by my drones.
So one would think that this would be from Elon Musk.
Well, I've heard Larry Ellison down through, he hasn't been as public about it, but what
Right.
I've heard down through the years is that Oracle is the most unethical company. I mean, like 20 years ago, it was Microsoft. They were incredibly unethical, stomping on their enemies and placing unreasonable rules on stores and stuff. And then Microsoft cleaned up after the antitrust lawsuit. But from what I've heard, Oracle has just been the archetypical evil corporation all along.
It's interesting. Ellison hasn't been in the news like Bill Gates has,
Yeah.
or yeah, Bill Gates, let's say.
Previously, he avoided saying so many stupid things in public. He seems to be learning the new technique of just
Yeah,
blurting out. And I was just listening to Rachel Maddow last night, and she said, Trump's latest thing about saying they're eating dogs and cats is probably to cover up 3 or 4 other damaging news stories that would be in the news now if he didn't create some noise to distract you. And I think
oh,
that's a
I see.
I think that's a strategic technique that the oligarchs are learning from each other.
Yeah, so there was a movie, you mentioned a movie. There was a movie called Wag the Dog. Do you
Oh
remember
yeah,
that years
yeah,
ago?
yeah. That's
And
the
that
same thing. Yeah,
same thing, that you have some issue coming up
yeah,
and you created that's pretty severe, but you create a distraction.
yeah. There was a similar one around that time called I think Charlie Miller's War, where this guy wanted to start a war, I think in Afghanistan or something, and and what he did was he let his cocaine use come out and make a scandal so he could start the war because that made the
Yeah.
headlines and he could do something else. And
Yeah,
he,
it works, right? It works.
yeah. So anyway, maybe Larry Ellison has a master plan here, or maybe he's just an idiot. But it is an outrageous thing to say. But of course, so is most of what Trump says. Obviously outrageous, obviously crazy. Said,
Yeah, so here's the question. Where would we store all of that data?
well,
Okay, little
that's enough.
problem there.
Well, they're doing it in China. In China, they really effectively have this. You have like a
Yeah.
citizen value score that goes up and down, and they're tracking everything you do and rating you up and down. And if
Yeah.
that, so, I mean, it can be done. It reminds me of like IBM sending their computers to South Africa so they could track everybody's race and movements. Computers make it possible to create this totalitarian state if that's what you want.
Yeah, well, there's a book that was written a number of years ago called IBM the Holocaust, and it was IBM's in the punch card era was using punch cards to track citizens.
Yeah, and I think in South Africa there are like 14 different racial groups, and they would never have been able to
Yeah,
do that without the aid of computer technology.
yeah, 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 exactly.
Yeah.
IBM did get sued over this, and around 2005, I think, early 2000s, and that lawsuit kind of went away.
Well, this is like the current stuff going on in Israel and Gaza, which
Right.
the UN is totally condemning as a genocide. The problem is if another nation is doing something, there's a limit to what you can do. And this concept that there are international laws seems to be pretty much just a fiction.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
um,
yeah. All
well,
right. Well, let's continue with the
yeah.
pleasant news here. Amazon is killing remote working. So they're demanding back in the office 5 days a week or find a new job.
Do you believe this? I mean, many people have said this, and then they find out that no matter what you do, nobody will do it. And then they relent. I mean,
Well, you know, who was it? Um, Yahoo did this, didn't it?
I don't know about you. A
Marissa Mayer?
whole bunch of companies have said
Yeah.
this, and then they found out, well, all the good people are going to leave if you make them come back to work.
Yeah, but I'll tell you on the flip side, there are a lot of IT workers, talented IT workers out of jobs.
Yeah.
So maybe,
Oh, well, the other thing I've heard is that the actual point
yeah,
of these mandates is to lay off people. Now you don't have to like issue layoff notices. You say, well, it's your fault for not coming in.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That might be what's
yeah,
going
good
on.
point.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah, and
I think
another,
evidence is,
this is kind of another variant of wag the dog.
yeah. And I've heard a lot of people say that studies show that people are more effective working from home, and I tend to believe it. I mean, with the remote devices we have now, you can really get your job done at home. I mean, all my consulting gigs, people are working from home, and it's working fine.
Hmm.
I mean, is I can't think of a reason to go into the office for most information jobs.
I think the rationale behind it is that you're interacting more with your coworkers, and you're not able to do that on Zoom
Yeah,
or Teams.
well, we do it, and I think once you get used to it, it's fine. And I also think that what people say is if they go into work, nobody else is there. They're just on Zoom talking to everybody else who's at home.
Yeah, 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 yeah. At the beginning of the pandemic is, oh, we can all work from home, Teams,
Yeah.
Zoom. That's going to be the answer. Now, what we're hearing is researchers are saying that Teams and Zooms is not as effective as people being in the office 5 days a week. People are more productive when they're in the office.
I haven't seen any studies like that. I've
You'll
seen
see these coming out. You'll
Well, I
see
imagine.
these.
Well, I as a teacher, I thought about this starting maybe 6 years ago when it became possible. I said,
Yeah,
why am I making students drive into the classroom to just listen to a lecture? And I said, I'm just going to put it all on the internet, and they'll only come in if there's a reason to come in. Like they want to use the machines in there, or they want personal help. They're bringing in their broken machine, or there's something really hands-on happening, like lockpicking. But there's no reason to make them come in unless there's something happening that they couldn't do from home.
yeah, yeah,
And in the office, I remember like decades ago, I would go to the office every day and all I would do is sit there and write code in front of a computer. I could have been doing that
yeah.
at home.
Yeah, yeah. I listen. Both answers are correct.
Well, yeah, I think this is why the real answer is hybrid. You come
Yeah,
in sometimes, some people come in all the time, like the receptionist has to be there. The guy that actually fixes the physical things, like the doors and the lights, has to be there. And a bunch of
yeah,
people don't really have to be there. And I think everybody should be hybrid.
yeah. Well, that was, one of the things that Steve Jobs came up with when they were designing the new Apple campus was one bathroom per floor. And do you know about this?
No.
No, okay.
You
And
think you have quality time running into other people in the bathroom?
well, the idea behind that is if you're at the opposite end of the building, remember
Yeah.
it's a circular building, which means you have to go to the left or the right if you're at the far end. And as you're walking down the hallways, you're going to interact with people to get to the bathroom. And the same as you go, back to your cubicle or office. And what was realized was, Steve, it might take some of these people 10, 15 minutes to walk around the building. And so I believe that he was talked out of that, or it was changed and now there are multiple bathrooms. But that was the idea. That was, what he thought, what his beliefs were when it was being built.
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
We'll see.
yeah, I will tell you, if you ever watched, can't remember the Apollo program, there was a movie, Hidden Figures, which were about the Black women that were the computers
Yeah.
at the time, meaning that they did the mathematical calculations, and they were good at it. And at the time they had to use a restroom that was for colored folk only.
Oh man.
And that was a 15-minute walk. And so people at running NASA were saying, why are you taking so long? And so one of the complaints was, we have to go to the bathroom. And we can't use the bathroom that's here. We have to go use the one for colored folk. So that was one that was changed relatively quickly, along with segregation in the lunchroom. You're not interacting with people. You're not able to solve problems. And here we're trying to send people to the moon, right? Which has never been done before, but racism trumped that at the
Yeah.
time of this. And, that was a barrier that was broken down.
Well, that's a good result.
Yeah, yeah. I think, in wartime national interests, doing something like sending people to the moon and entertainment are two areas where racial boundaries are broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sports, sports,
Anyway.
sports too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Good point. Sports
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Sports too. All right. What do you got? You got another story for us?
Yes, I got a couple that go together, and I finally realized for years I've been confusing Pegasus and Predator because they both do the same thing, but they come from different companies. And, I
Okay.
always get students coming in saying, someone's hacking me. They know everything that's on my phone. And, I used to, years ago, I would say, oh, you're just paranoid. Now I say, well, that technology exists. If somebody really powerful is after you, they totally can infect your phone and find out everything in your life. And so, the US is cracking down on a very international group that makes the Predator spyware that does this. They've issued sanctions on a spyware vendor, Intellexa, which seems to be all over the world. Um, one guy, I had a list of them. Yeah. Uh, One guy is in Ireland, one in Greece, one in Hungary, one in North Macedonia. Somehow all these people are working together to distribute. This is a commercial spyware network of entities distributing the spyware Predator. And uh, apparently related to this, Apple has now sought dismissal of its NSO Group lawsuit. Now, the NSO is the Israeli company that made Pegasus spyware, which all kinds of people bought, and I think they did infect the head of Amazon with it. Um,
Hmm.
and they sold it to people that used it to break down on journalists and dissidents and political opponents and all sorts of unethical things. So the United States sanctioned the NSO Group, although it still exists in Israel selling this stuff. And what Apple also sued them because it's primarily an attack against iPhones, and Apple is very upset. But Apple has now decided to dismiss that lawsuit because they say the discovery will involve revealing Apple's security measures, which they want to keep confidential. They say, even though we know you courts will try to keep it private, we know that in the past, other spyware makers have in fact hacked the core system to steal that
Yeah.
information to make better spyware. They say now so many companies all over the world are making spyware like this that releasing the information would do more harm than the good done by shutting down NSO. So
I see.
apparently this is a booming market, increasing, and Apple is sort of withdrawing from battling the bad guys. I talk about this fairly often in our classes. I mean, there's two ways to attack security threats. like a security threat like spam, say if 1,000 people are sending spam, then the only thing you can do is like build a better defense, like a filter on your email. But if really only like 5 people are sending all the spam, then you can just arrest them. And I
Yeah.
think what Apple's saying is it's tipping from being able to arrest the spyware makers to just accepting there's so much of it, we can't possibly arrest them and we're going to have to build some other kind of defense. So apparently it's big business. And this also implies that it will be available to more and more people, not just the top performers. So I would think this probably means there will be more and more students coming in saying somebody is spying on me, and it'll be more and more true because it will become available to lower level attackers.
Yeah, but Sam, why would somebody spy on students?
Oh, usually fighting over romance is the main one. This, this
Okay,
is a
okay.
huge market. Is my wife cheating on me? Who is my girlfriend going out with now? This is a huge market.
Yeah, yeah. So it's volume versus targeted attacks.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
already sell this stuff. They pretend it's child monitoring software, but it's really for husbands to find out if their wives are cheating.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And that's
Huh.
been a huge bread and butter of low-level detective agencies forever is tracking down marital partners to see if they're cheating.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
sleaziest, dirtiest job because everybody will hate you. Nobody will love you for doing this. In fact, it's pretty likely that they will shoot you when you tell them, it's pretty grimy work, but there's a huge demand for it.
Yeah, it's the answer to a question that people are asking that they don't want to know the answer to.
Yeah, in fact, my ex-wife worked for a company like this, and the guy was tailing a guy's wife and found out she was cheating on him, and then didn't tell him because if I tell him, he's going to go shoot her, and that'll be bad. So the best thing is to continue to take the money and lie to him and not tell him. And he might even be right about that in a sort of twisted way. Makes you feel like this whole job makes no sense.
Yeah, there was this is kind of a complex story, but I'll kind of greatly simplify this. Contra Costa County, probably about 12, 15 years ago, there was a private eye. His name was Butler, and he was working with the head of Contra Costa's drug enforcement unit for the sheriff's department. And they had a little side business going on where they would, in divorce cases, they would get three women to get somebody drunk in a bar, the husband drunk in a bar, to going through a divorce case. They'd say, hey, come back to our place. And so they'd have the husband follow the three women. And as soon as they pulled out into the street, the police, sheriff would pull him over for drunk driving, which not at the time probably he was, but by the time they did the breathalyzer test, he was, meaning the alcohol was
Yeah, yeah.
right
A
being
honey trap.
metabolized. Yeah, yeah, honey trap.
Yeah.
This story goes a little bit more because Butler was trying to create a reality TV program. Remember Charlie's Angels
Yeah.
TV show? So he called his PI moms
Oh.
and staged the photos, the PR photos, in the format of Charlie's Angels. And they had a whole episode that he filmed that was kind of the test market, or what do you call the pilot episode.
Hmm.
It was filmed up in Napa, and there were newspaper reporters, journalists that were kind of following along. I think there were a handful of them that were kind of following along. And as they were watching the couple meet, meaning the husband with the woman, the other woman,
Hmm.
they had the wife in the car, and they were saying, do you want to meet her? Do you want to confront her? Don't you? It was a confrontation thing at some spa up in Napa. And the journalist was thinking, this doesn't feel right. Something just doesn't seem right.
This is like Jerry Springer, right? That would bring
Yep.
people to like,
Yep.
yeah, just a kind of gruesome reality TV, playing with
Yep.
people's emotions at a time when they're liable to do something stupid.
Yeah. So it turns out these were all actors.
Yeah.
And what the journalist didn't know is because they also, the journalists also found out about the connection with the sheriff's department, and he was given email. He started receiving emails in the middle of the night. And that's when he started getting scared, because you could easily get a life sentence by the sheriff who's working in the drug division, planning drugs. And if it was a judge and a DA that were all in on this, they could be in prison.
Well, if Larry Ellison had a drone recording everything that sheriff did, it would totally prevent all these abuses.
There you go. Except we could use AI and doctor the videos
Yeah.
and make it somebody else like Larry Ellison.
Yeah, you're
And
true.
who would know what the truth is?
Yeah. All right.
Right? You with me
Yeah.
on that? So
Yeah.
that kind of brings into a story I have.
Yeah.
So let me start off by saying, do you listen to Spotify? Are you a Spotify? I'm not either.
Don't even know what it is.
Yeah, so Spotify is very popular. It's a music listening service. It's really put a dent in AM, FM radio, as well as music sales, and also artists making money off of selling music, right? Nobody's buying records or Apple Music. You go to
Well,
Spotify
well,
right now.
I have Amazon Prime and I can play music through that, anything I want.
Yeah, but everybody goes to Spotify. I don't know what the advantage is.
Maybe it
Doesn't make
has
it
more music
doesn't.
or something.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the question. This came out from Snoop Dogg. If he has billions of listens or downloads, any idea, a billion, right? Let's say 5 billion. Any idea how much money he makes?
I don't know.
$35.
Oh, that seems outrageous.
What? Large, small?
No, obviously too small. I mean, like 30 years ago, he would expect to sell a copy of a record for like 10 or 12 bucks for each one of those. So
Yeah,
it'd be
and
billions of
make
dollars.
in the millions of the
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah.
Now, when he gets say 5 billion listens, he gets less than $50.
So how is Taylor Swift a billionaire? There is some way to make money off of this. Is it the live concerts?
So yeah, the way that musicians are making money now is live concerts. And it used to be off of record sales, and they'd have to do the road trips, the live concerts to get people to buy the records.
Well, the Grateful Dead did it the other way.
Yeah, well now the model is flipped.
Yeah.
And
Well,
now what you have to do is you do the live concerts to make the money.
well, that's my model. My classes are all free on the internet, but you attend the class and that I get paid for, I get
Yeah.
paid. So, I mean, that works.
All right. So with that in mind, there was a young enterprising man who got arrested too long ago and convicted. And I'm curious if you heard this story, but I think this is pretty brilliant. He used an AI, what do you call it, music maker? Is that a good way of phrasing
Well,
that?
it made AI music. No
He
human.
used,
Yeah.
yeah, he was creating AI music and uploading to Spotify.
Yeah.
Now, who would listen to crappy AI music? Some people do, but nobody would. But the question is, how does he make millions off of off of listening to the music?
Click
And
fraud.
the answer is bots.
Yeah.
So he
But
created.
from what you just told me from Snoop Dogg, even if he had a billion bots, he'd only make 35 bucks apparently.
Somehow, maybe it was additional services other
Yeah.
than Spotify, but somehow he was making
Yeah.
millions of dollars. I don't think he was making a lot of money.
Well, this is click fraud. It's been around forever. You have
Yeah, yeah.
clicking
But
on ads and they're getting like a penny per click, so it adds up.
but here you generate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what he was doing was the volume. So it wasn't that he was one artist like Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
I think he had thousands or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of artists, but he also had hundreds of thousands of listens at the same time, or downloads.
The same thing happens with books. There are AI generated books on Amazon and people buy them and it's used to launder campaign cash to put it in your pocket. Like, Donald Trump Jr. wrote a book and nobody read it. It's just his campaign buys it. And now the money is his personal money.
I see. So is that kind of like the Trump Bible?
Well, no, the Trump Bible and Trump sneakers and the Trump trading cards and now the Trump cryptocurrency, his mega people buy that stuff. And by the way, it might even be a good investment. The Trump NFTs went up for a while. You could have tripled your money. I mean, the fact is, success feeds on success. It's just popularity.
Yeah.
He wins the election, it will all go up. And it's a, it's a risky investment, but it is an investment.
All right. What do you got? What's your next story
Well, the
here?
next one I was pretty interested in. So, C++ and C research papers came out maybe 5 or 10 years ago saying, all these memory corruption vulnerabilities are just caused by all these derivatives of C. It's just too confusing for developers. And so Mark Versinovich became one of the guys saying, we just have to knock it off and write the code in Rust. Big important, the head of
Really?
Azure. Yeah, the head of
Yeah.
Microsoft Azure and a real expert on Windows. And then the C++ creator came back and said, oh no, we can now achieve guaranteed perfect type and memory safety in ISO C++. So he's proposing this thing called Safe C++, which will supposedly fix the flaws in C++ and let you keep using it without recreating all those problems. So the battle begins. I've certainly had fun teaching Rust and learning Rust and proving how secure Rust is, but I guess, and when I tried to look at the safe C++, it looks bafflingly complicated, which is the problem with C. C is so
Right.
confusing, it's very hard to write secure code. And what they've done is just lay another layer of confusion on top of it. The argument of C from the beginning has been if you developers just understood what you were doing better, you wouldn't make these mistakes. But the problem is it's too hard to understand, whereas you don't need to understand everything about Rust so much. It will just not do stupid things. It will warn you when stupid things are happening. Anyway,
I see.
but they're pushing this thing called Safe C++, which is C extensions. And Microsoft tried this about 20 years ago or 15 years ago. They had a bunch of additional libraries to lower the flaws in C, and the end result was there were still a bunch of memory corruption flaws. So I'm from what I know, I agree with Mark. I think we just need to move to Rust. But anyway, there's a new push for
Yeah.
Safe C++ that is an alternative. If you really love C++ and you want to keep all the features and make it more safe, that's an alternative to investigate.
Yeah. Sam, have you ever heard of F sharp,
I
which
think
is
so, but I
another
never used it.
programming language?
Yeah. Oh, there's hundreds.
Yeah. Yeah. Thousands probably, right?
Yeah.
So do you know anything about F sharp?
No, I
Nope.
don't.
Okay. I've been told, I believe that's also from Microsoft, and it's a completely different mindset from C. So,
Well, it could be better. I don't know.
yeah. You know, years ago, not that many years ago, I guess, a lot of companies were saying, we want to hire programmers. We want to hire programmers that can program like a rock star. So somebody came up with a programming language called like a rock star. And so therefore you could apply for these jobs saying, I know programming like a rock star.
Well, there was a thing I heard about 10 years ago, the 10 times developer, that really some developers are 10 times more productive than the others. And you should just fire the rest and only have these super developers. They were pushing that for a while. Haven't heard that in a few years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
It's
think that's true of all employees, right? You have a few star employees. You think, what if we only had them instead of the ordinary people? And eventually you realize that's not really a practical plan.
yeah, it's right. When you hire employees, you have a spectrum.
And people go up and down too. People have periods of being on top of
Yep.
their game, and then they have periods of not being on top of their game. And you kind of have to just understand that.
Yeah, yeah. You have to average it out.
Yeah, yeah. You just can't, you have to understand. You can only expect a reasonable amount of work out of each worker. I used to get upset at all the companies I worked at where I would work like 80 or 100 hours a week. And I said, why don't they just hire more people instead of having all this overtime? Yeah.
Yeah, different budget, I think. Different
Well,
head count.
well,
I
also,
actually, I think paying an employee overtime is actually less costly than bringing on another employee once you factor in benefits and social security
maybe
taxes.
that could have been it. The thing I noticed there was the technical debt. The problem is only the people that had been there for a while knew how to do things. It was so complicated. And a new guy would take months to spin up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been there. I understand
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I've also seen companies crumble because they get rid of their technical talent.
Yeah. And the problem is what you do is you burn out your technical talent and then you're
Yeah,
hosed. So, it's
yeah,
it's sort of like short-term versus long-term thinking. Anyway.
yeah. And I've been there too. So,
I think
okay,
the
you got
current
to,
round, and I think the current round of all the layoffs is more short-term thinking. You lay off people, then pretty soon you have to hire new people, and they don't know what's going on. So what was the point of that?
yeah. I will tell you, it's my kind of um, impression, no, my work history experience that when you hire somebody, it normally takes somebody about a year to come up to speed to be productive.
Yeah,
Not to say that they're not productive, but to really understand and assimilate and to fit in and be even more productive, to be a more valuable member of the work team.
yeah. I wonder. I've never worked at really big corporations, but supposedly, if you get like a Microsoft certification, then they could hire you and you actually know what you're supposed to do in that job. I wonder if that's true.
No, and it never has been.
I know it's not true at small companies. At small companies, you have to
Yeah.
the job a whole bunch. Yeah,
So the reason is you get a Microsoft certification. Microsoft only tests you on Microsoft environment,
right.
and Microsoft solutions are not always the best. And that's why you have third-party products out there.
Yeah. So
So, and you have to integrate these third-party products,
yeah.
which means you don't use the Microsoft technology because in some instances it doesn't work as well.
Yeah. And also everything keeps changing.
And right, and everything keeps changing. The
Yeah.
best example, I'll give you a simple one, is why did VMware take off when Microsoft had Hyper-V or they had an early version of virtualization? And it's because VMware was better. It added failover clustering, it had a high availability.
Sure. It was
Microsoft,
established. Yeah.
yeah, Microsoft wasn't offering that.
Yeah.
So even though Microsoft did have a solution, it wasn't robust enough.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there were other issues, but that's just kind of a quick example. Do you have one more?
Um, well, I do. Uh,
Yeah,
there's the secure boot is not all that secure. This came out a month or so ago. There's this
yep.
PK failed debacle where everybody used the demonstration key instead of filling it in with their own key. It turns out this is even worse than people thought. Previously, they knew 513 models of products using that host key. Now they found 972 devices, all using the example key that says insecure, do not use example key, replace this with your key, and everybody just used it in their crypto. So it kind of shows that this is almost universal, that everybody doesn't understand crypto. They just plug in the code that they got somewhere and don't look at it further. And so it's got medical
Yeah.
devices, gaming consoles, ATMs, point of till terminals, and many, many other things are all using these default keys, which is basically like having a default password.
Oh
So,
my
so
gosh.
secure boot has never worked. And on Paul Security Podcast, I talked to Paul and his gang. They work in this. Secure boot has a lot of weak spots. I mean, fundamentally, when you start your machine, it starts with a bunch of code and runs it with highest privileges, and it doesn't have any way to check it.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, it starts out by just running code, and if somebody could get to that code, you're pretty much hosed. And the attempts to secure that are, I think, in early stages and not too successful yet.
Yeah. Interesting.
So secure boot, not
All
so
right.
much.
Not secure boot isn't that secure. So
Yeah,
what you got one more story? I'll
no.
finish up. No, okay, let me finish up today's episode here. So there's a tech company, I believe based out of San Francisco or the Bay Area, that's got a brilliant idea. We've got all these data centers that are generating all this heat. Why don't we just put them into a container and dump them in the ocean? So what they want to do is put these containers, fill them full of GPUs, stick them in San Francisco Bay for cooling.
Well, you could just have water cooling above land. and it would be a whole lot
You
cleaner and
could.
easier to control. And why would you actually dump it underwater and make it so hard?
Well, I would argue they do have a good point. It's more energy efficient. You don't have to pump all that water. So hold on, just hold on before we go here. And by the way, Microsoft and other cloud companies do have data centers located next to rivers or water sources where they are pulling the water out. They're using it for cooling and returning it,
Right.
much like nuclear power plants do
Right, but
for cooling.
you can walk in the server room without a scuba tank. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
seems like like just piping the water in is a far more efficient way to do the job.
Yeah, and if these people would look into this, they'd learn that Microsoft has been doing this for well over a decade in Ireland.
Really? So it's actually worth doing?
Oh, yeah. Well, it was testing, and I think they finally, after 2 or 3 generations of doing it, have discontinued it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems abundantly stupid. Why would you put the whole thing underwater when all you need is water cooling?
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, I don't know.
Yeah.
But here's the twist that these geniuses have come up with. And their twist on this is that we can do the experiments, but we don't have to abide by environmental laws.
Well, that's the other thing that occurred to me. I mean, you're warming up the water, which is a big environmental issue, right? That will affect the fish and the plants and everything.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. A 1, 2 degree increase in temperature
Yeah,
can cause environmental changes. And
especially around here, people don't let you get away with that.
yeah, yeah. So they're arguing over this when what they should do is go back and see what Microsoft and other companies have already done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a funny story.
yeah. That sounds like another of these bogus ideas that's going nowhere.
Yeah, I would agree. Well,
Yeah,
that's it for me, Sam.
yeah, that's it for me too. All right.
All right.
I have another one of these on Friday.
Yep, we'll resume back, come back on Friday.